Gene Kelly's voice was shaking with rage as he dialed the studio head's number at 6:47 p.m. on September 23, 1968. His hands, still steady enough to perform the most intricate choreography, trembled as he gripped the phone. But this wasn't about age or exhaustion. This was about witnessing something so unconscionable that it had shattered his faith in an industry he had called home for 30 years. "Arthur, it is Gene," Kelly said when MGM executive Arthur Freed answered. "I am calling to tell you that I am walking off. That's entertainment effective immediately. And if you want to know why, you can ask your director what he just did to the greatest dancer who ever lived." On the other end of the line, Freed felt his stomach drop. Gene Kelly didn't make empty threats, and he certainly didn't abandon multi-million-dollar productions over petty disagreements. If Kelly was walking, something catastrophic had happened. What Freed didn't know was that in the next 12 minutes, Kelly would reveal the most shameful moment in Hollywood's treatment of its aging stars, and explain why he was willing to destroy his own project to defend the man who had once been his greatest rival. The incident that ended a movie began that morning with what should have been a celebration. That's Entertainment was designed as the ultimate tribute to MGM's golden age of musicals, featuring the studio's greatest stars in a nostalgic look back at their most memorable performances. Fred Astaire, now 69 years old and visibly frail, had been invited to participate as the film's most honored guest. For Kelly, who was producing and directing the project, having Astaire involved was essential. You couldn't tell the story of movie musicals without acknowledging the man who had essentially invented the form. But what Kelly didn't anticipate was how cruelly the passage of time would be used against his former rival. The trouble started during Astaire's first scene, a simple walk through the MGM backlot while discussing his career. Director Jack Haley Jr., eager to stay on schedule and increasingly frustrated with Astaire's slower pace, began making comments that revealed his complete lack of respect for the legend he was supposed to be honoring. "Fred, we need more energy," Haley called out after Astaire's third take of a walking sequence. "Remember, you are supposed to be Fred Astaire, not somebody's grandfather." Kelly, who was reviewing footage in the nearby monitor tent, felt something cold settle in his chest. The comment was inappropriate, but not yet unforgivable. Astaire was a professional. He could handle a younger director's impatience. But as the day progressed, Haley's treatment of Astaire became increasingly harsh. "Can someone get Fred a chair?" Haley announced loudly to the crew during a break. Apparently, standing for 20 minutes is too much to ask. Kelly watched Astaire's face during this humiliation and saw something that broke his heart. The expression of a proud man being publicly diminished by someone young enough to be his son. Still, Kelly held his tongue. Astaire was strong enough to defend himself if he chose to. And the movie was too important to the studio, and to preserving the legacy of MGM's musical era, to risk over personality conflicts. The breaking point came during Astaire's final sequence of the day. The scene required Astaire to perform a brief dance routine while discussing his partnership with Ginger Rogers. Nothing elaborate, just a few simple steps to demonstrate his points about rhythm and timing. For any other performer, it would have been a pleasant afternoon's work, but Fred Astaire was 69 years old, suffering from arthritis that made every movement painful, and working with a director who seemed determined to humiliate him. Kelly was in the sound booth when he heard Haley's voice boom across the set. "Fred, I need you to understand something. This isn't 1935. You can't just shuffle around and expect audiences to be impressed. If you can't give me real dancing, maybe we should get someone who can." Through the booth's window, Kelly watched Astaire's face crumple with a mixture of pain and embarrassment that no human being should have to endure in public, much less a man who had spent 50 years bringing joy to millions of people. But what happened next was so shocking that Kelly would remember every detail for the rest of his life. Astaire, determined to prove he could still perform despite his age and physical limitations, attempted to execute a series of turns that would have been challenging for a dancer half his age. On the second turn, his arthritic knee gave out, and he fell hard to the studio floor. The crew rushed to help him, but before anyone could reach Astaire, Haley's voice cut through the concern. Jesus Christ. Fred. This is exactly what I was talking about. Maybe it is time to admit you are too old for this business. Kelly was out of the sound booth and across the set before Haley finished speaking. The journey from sound booth to confrontation felt like it took forever, though Kelly covered the distance in less than 10 seconds. As he walked, he could see the faces of the crew members, veteran Hollywood professionals who had worked with every major star of the past 3 decades. Their expressions told him everything he needed to know about what they had just witnessed. These weren't young assistants or inexperienced technicians. These were men who had seen Frank Sinatra throw tantrums, watched Judy Garland collapse under pressure, and witnessed countless ego battles between temperamental stars. But the look in their eyes was different now, a mixture of shame and disbelief that suggested even they had never seen anything quite this cruel. Tommy Morrison, the film's cinematographer who had shot 14 of Kelly's movies, caught his eye as he passed. Tommy had known Kelly for 25 years, had watched him handle difficult performers, demanding executives, and impossible production schedules with unfailing professionalism. But the expression on Tommy's face said everything. This was different. This was unforgivable. Kelly could feel his anger building with each step, not just at Haley's cruelty, but at his own failure to intervene earlier. He had heard the inappropriate comments, witnessed the escalating disrespect, and convinced himself that Astaire could handle it. He had prioritized the production over basic human decency. And now Fred Astaire was paying the price for his cowardice. By the time Kelly reached Haley, his decision was already made. This wasn't going to be a conversation or a warning. This was going to be the end of Jack Haley Jr.'s involvement with any project Gene Kelly would ever touch. What did you just say? Kelly's voice was deadly quiet as he approached the director. Haley, apparently unaware that he had just crossed an unforgivable line, doubled down on his cruelty. I said maybe it is time for Fred to face reality. He is embarrassing himself, and he is embarrassing this production. Kelly looked down at Fred Astaire, who was being helped to his feet by 2 crew members, his face showing the kind of humiliation that comes not from physical pain but from being publicly dismissed as worthless. In that moment, Kelly made a decision that would cost MGM millions of dollars and effectively end the most ambitious musical retrospective ever attempted. Jack, Kelly said quietly, "You are fired. Pack your things and get off my set." Haley stared at Kelly in disbelief. "Gene, you can't be serious. We are behind schedule already. You can't fire me over this." "I just did. And if you aren't gone in 5 minutes, I will have security escort you out." But Kelly wasn't finished. As Haley gathered his belongings, Kelly addressed the entire crew with words that would become legendary among those who witnessed them. "Ladies and gentlemen, this production is finished. Not postponed. Not delayed. Finished. I will not continue to work on a project that allows the humiliation of Fred Astaire. Regardless of the financial consequences, the crew stood in stunned silence as Kelly helped Astaire to a chair and knelt beside him. "Fred, I am deeply sorry for what just happened. You have given more to this industry than any of us have any right to expect, and you deserve to be treated with the respect that your contributions have earned." Astaire, his dignity restored by Kelly's intervention, managed a weak smile. "Gene, you don't have to end the movie for me. I can handle a little criticism." This wasn't criticism. "Fred, this was cruelty. And I won't be part of any project that treats you with anything less than the reverence you deserve." Kelly's decision to walk off. That's entertainment sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The film had been budgeted at $3.2 million and was seen as a guaranteed success. Kelly's departure effectively killed the project, costing MGM a fortune, and eliminating what would have been a landmark celebration of the studio's musical legacy. But Kelly never regretted his choice, even as it strained his relationship with MGM and cost him future directing opportunities. Arthur, Kelly continued his phone call to Fred. "I want you to understand something. Fred Astaire has forgotten more about entertainment than that director will ever know. And if MGM is going to allow its projects to be used as platforms for humiliating legends, then maybe MGM doesn't deserve to tell the story of its own golden age." "Fred, who had built his career on the talents of men like Kelly and Astaire, was silent for a long moment. "Jane, I had no idea this was happening. If I had known, you would have what? Stopped it? Or found a way to make it more palatable for the sake of the production schedule?" The question hung in the air like an indictment of an industry that had lost sight of the humanity behind its profitable stars. "Jen, we need to finish this movie. Maybe we can find another director. Someone who understands how to work with—" "No, Arthur, we are done. I am not interested in salvaging this project. I am interested in making sure that what happened to Fred today never happens to any other performer on any set. I am involved with—" Kelly's phone call to Fred lasted only 12 minutes, but its impact reverberated through Hollywood for years. Word spread quickly that Kelly had walked off a major production to defend Fred Astaire's dignity, and the gesture resonated throughout an industry that had grown increasingly callous toward its aging stars. For Astaire, Kelly's intervention meant more than just rescue from a humiliating situation. It meant validation that his contributions to entertainment were still valued, that his legacy was worth protecting, that his dignity mattered more than production schedules or budget considerations. The two men, who had spent decades as professional rivals, became close friends in the years following the incident. Astaire would later say that Kelly's willingness to sacrifice a major project for the sake of basic human decency was the most generous act he had ever witnessed in Hollywood. "Gene didn't just walk off that set for me," Astaire reflected years later. "He walked off for every performer who had ever been told they were too old, too slow, too damaged to deserve respect. He reminded everyone that dignity isn't something you earn. It's something you are entitled to, regardless of your current commercial value." Kelly, meanwhile, never spoke publicly about the incident. But those who knew him well understood that it had crystallized his philosophy about the entertainment industry and his responsibility to protect the people who had built it. That day on the set, I realized that preserving MGM's legacy wasn't about making a movie, Kelly said in a rare, candid moment near the end of his life. It was about protecting the people who had created that legacy in the first place. The movie that Kelly walked away from was eventually completed in 1974, under different management, and became a massive success. But those involved in the original production always wondered what it might have been like if Kelly had stayed and if Fred Astaire had been treated with the respect he deserved. More importantly, Kelly's decision to prioritize human dignity over commercial considerations became a defining moment for an industry that often forgot the cost of its success. His willingness to sacrifice millions of dollars and his own career advancement to protect an aging colleague sent a message that resonated far beyond one aborted production. In an industry known for eating its own, Gene Kelly had drawn a line that couldn't be crossed. Not for money, not for art, not for any reason that mattered less than basic human decency. The respect that ended a movie became the foundation for a friendship that lasted until Astaire's death in 1987. And Kelly's intervention on that September afternoon in 1968 became legendary among performers who understood that someone, somewhere, was willing to protect them when their own value to the industry began to fade. Years later, when young directors asked Kelly for advice about working with older performers, his answer was always the same. Remember that the people you are working with have already proven themselves. Your job isn't to judge their current abilities. It is to help them share their gifts with the world one more time. That wisdom, born from a moment of moral clarity on an MGM soundstage, became Kelly's lasting contribution to an industry that had given him everything and asked for everything in return. The movie that ended with a walk-off became the beginning of a new understanding of what respect looks like when the cameras stop rolling and the real measure of character begins. And perhaps that was the most important choreography Gene Kelly ever performed. Not the steps he created for entertainment, but the stand he took for dignity, the movement he made toward protecting the vulnerable, the dance of conscience that reminded everyone watching that some things matter more than show business. In the end, the respect that ended a movie started a conversation that continues today about how we treat our aging artists, about what we owe to those who have given us their best years, about the difference between honoring the past and exploiting it for commercial gain. Gene Kelly's walk-off that MGM set wasn't just about defending Fred Astaire. It was about defending the idea that every performer, regardless of age or current commercial value, deserves to be treated with the dignity that their humanity demands. That lesson, more than any dance routine or directorial achievement, became the most beautiful performance of Kelly's career. A reminder that the most important steps we take are often the ones that move us toward protecting others, even when it costs us everything we think we want.